Did you know that there are three major ways to develop car control? And I have experienced all of them on my own skin. And there's actually a fourth, which is going to be a bonus. And if you stick till the end of the video, you will see what I'm talking about. Now, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you like this video. Let's get started. There's number one. Number one is driving in low grip conditions. So think about it. When you drive in low grip conditions, for example, when you drive in the wet, you are constantly sliding between the front and rear axle, and you're always basically controlling the car, whether it's in understeer mode or in oversteer mode. Mostly of the time, you're going to be in oversteer. But the reality is that whenever you are driving low grippy conditions, and it's going to be hard to drive, and it's going to be slippery, that's where you develop car control. Okay? Yes, you still do develop car control when it's high grip, but it's less, because when you're driving in high grip conditions, it's like the driver is feeling the car planted almost like on rails, because there's so much grip. There's there's not enough movement from the car. It's feeling on rail. Of course, when you're pushing, you're gonna feel like over the limit, and it's gonna be like that, and you're gonna start to slide. But most of the times, when there's high grip conditions, you are developing yes, less car control compared to when you are driving in slippery conditions. The number two, which to be honest is the one I like the most, is driving an oversteer car. So whether it's a go-kart, it's a racing car, it's driving a oversteer vehicle, basically. Why I'm talking about this? Because think about it. When you're driving, let's talk about the opposite, which is driving with an understeer car. When we're talking about driving with an understeer car, the car is basically very stable, okay? There's a lot of rear grip, rear stability, and the front probably is not so much. And it's like driving a road car. Think about it. When you're driving a road car, okay, the steering ratio of a road car is like 15:1, okay, whereas the steer ratio of a kart is 1:1. So you put 1 degree of steering angle, and it's gonna reflect in 1 degree of wheel being turned, okay? That's basically like that. And if you have a 15:1 on a road car, you're gonna need 15 degrees of steering angle to turn 1 degree for the wheel to turn 1 degree, essentially. So but also the go-karts may be very aggressive on the front, or very, slippery or free on the front. So one of the best ways to develop car control for drivers is to drive with a very pointy car, which is either very loose in the rear or very, very pointed at the front, which is very high grip or reactive at the front, or it could be both, high reactivity at the front and loose in the rear. I love to drive high reactivity front and quite loose in the rear. That's my go-to, and to be honest, I'm quite tall, so that's pretty much my only way to go fast. Otherwise, if I drive with a lot of rear grip and not enough front, I will just basically have terrible exits and not enough rotation. But I have to thank my mechanic back in the days, my historical mechanic in between 2012, 2013, and 14. That's the year that I won the most, and that's when I won the World Championship against Lando Norris. But the reality is that when I was with my mechanic, I always at the beginning was like complaining about oversteer. Like I was like, oh, I want the car to be more balanced, etc. But he's like, you're like, screw the balance. You gotta be, the car has to be reactive. The car needs to be pointy. You need to put the car wherever you want. And he was true. He was so right. And he basically, it would put my seat quite forward. It would put my front very like full caster and everything. It would teach me to drive like that. In some cases, maybe it wasn't ideal. Maybe the track was like quite slippery and I had too much rotation. I would struggle with that. But the reality is that I stick to that. I adapted. I basically made it part of my driving style. Same as what Verstappen, Jos for sure, taught him how to drive a very, very pointy front on his kart, and that's why when he got to Formula 1, he was the only one able to drive a very, very pointy car. And you can hear the interviews from some of his teammates, including like Alex Albon, where he says that if you try to be teammate of Verstappen, you can't basically use his own setup because he drives with such a high precision on front in terms of like reactivity that it becomes almost impossible to drive. Because reality is a balanced car is a slow car. a very reactive car is a fast car, but it's more difficult and very unpredictable. That's the reality. And when you're going 320, 330 kilometers an hour through, a street circuit like Baku, let's say, or like Jeddah, you have to make sure that you are not putting in the wall and fool yourself. So that's why it's not easy to drive a higher activity car, like a car with generally a lot of reaction and like rotation and a bit of oversteer in build, which may scare most of drivers. But if you are used to that, since when you're 4 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old, when you're karting and you're like that, then you basically develop this innate feeling of car control that then people call talent. But the reality is that talent is overrated. You create the talent by the right technique, the right skill, like the drills, and this is one of those. For example, my drivers at BabyRace, I always want the car to be very reactive because and high rotation, because whenever it's gonna be required, because when the track normally gets grippy, you always want to have more rotation. When the track is green, you care more about real balance. But the reality is that if you do not get the kids to learn about that early on, you're never going to adapt them. So yes, as we said, the number one was low grip conditions, so getting used to low grip conditions. The number two, as we said, is driving with high rotation or oversteer mode. Okay, high rotation kart setup. Okay, high rotation plus oversteer. And number three is basically the concept of over pushing the limits versus under pushing. So the reality is this: if you are driving, let's say this is the limit, okay, so this is the limit. If you're constantly driving below the limits, okay, you're like driving all the time below the limit, it's like 90%, 95%, 96%, 97%, and you hope to get to the limit by the end of the session, well, that's not a good strategy. My preferred strategy is the opposite. It's like right on lap one, as soon as the tires are quite hot, like they need to get basic grip and temperature. I mean, of course, I wouldn't be able to push the limits on lap one if the tires are anywhere close to the hot temperature. But like what I would do, I would go beyond the limit right away, and then I will be like, okay, now I found the limit, I go back, and then I will be able to get the limit perfectly by the lap 4. So there's a different strategy, and the reality is that when you are driving in over pushing mode, which is what I'm preaching here, so pushing the limits, braking later than ever, carrying the speed into the corner, all right? That's the thing that's what I'm preaching. Because if you're always in the comfort zone of, I need to take it easy, I need to push a little by little, which unfortunately a lot of mechanics and a lot of coaches say, but I couldn't disagree more, because the reality is that the only way for you to develop your skills and develop your talent, together with actually warming up the tires, because if you want to get the tires to warm up quickly, you gotta push, you gotta go over the limit. And what I'm saying with over pushing, I'm not saying to brake so late that you're gonna go into the wall. Come on, let's be practical. What I'm saying is that if you have to choose between a mistake, let's say between pushing too much and pushing too little, I prefer that you push too much. Because let's say you lose 1/10 in a mechanic, like in a hairpin, let's say, because either you brake too early or because you brake too late. So let's make an imaginary hairpin, okay? Let's say you are braking here. Well, actually, let me change color so it's easier for you. So let's say you are braking here and you make the apex very easily, but you lose 1/10 from the ideal. So the ideal, let's say the purple, like the purple here, it's the ideal. Okay, so we brake a little bit later and you just make the corner a bit faster. So this is like the optimal braking point from the purple. But let's say what I'm saying here is that I want you to do the opposite. So if I have to make a mistake, because we do make mistakes, guys, nobody's perfect. If we have to make a mistake, the mistake I want is to go and over push. Okay, I want to over push, and yes, I'm gonna brake a bit too late. I'm just gonna slightly miss the apex, but that's fine, because you know what? I'm developing my skills. I am warming up my tires, and I will find the limit way earlier. Remember what I said here. You're gonna find the limit way earlier than if you didn't push the limits early on into the session. So this is really my recipe. So number one, get used to driving in low grip conditions. Example, drive with sometimes, like for example at Lonato, I'll tell you a story. I learned a lot how to handle low grip conditions and develop my car control when, for example, the day after the rental cars drive in the evening, for example, if you drive on a Monday or a Sunday or a Saturday, the rental cars drive so much in the evening at Lonato, because obviously the track needs to sell tickets, to make money, etc. But it makes sense. Every karting track really does that. You know, rental cars most of the time are a higher source of revenue than the actual professional owner cars. But I mean, remember that when I was driving in Lonato in the first, and I still do to be honest, in the first session of the morning, the track would be like 2 seconds off, but it would be so slippery because you would still have all the terrible rubber from the rentals, you know, it would be such a hard, terrible tire, and there would be also some grass on the track because they were like doing like bumper cuts, which I guess is what most of what we do as well. But yeah, I would drive that first session and it would be just super slippery, but still it would be worthless as a session in terms of like lap times and testing, because it like would be so off the pace. But it would teach me a lot, because it's still like you drive in those conditions where you are going to be you know, maybe sometimes be driving if it starts to rain all of a sudden during the race and you're on slicks, you may have to adapt. So that taught me a lot. But then driving low grip conditions, like driving in the rain, that also helps a lot because it develops your car control. Then the second one, as I said, is having a high rotation setup. So driving and getting used to driving with the high rotation, so an oversteery setup, which means you have nice and loose rear and a lot of front. Okay, that allows you to basically all the time be sliding and basically having to correct. And by doing a lot of corrections, you develop that car control. If the car is always on rails and it's always balanced, and you're never developing that car control, man. It's impossible. The third, as I said, is the over pushing. Over pushing means instead of, you know, getting close and close and close to the limits and taking like, you know, step by step and like being conservative. No, I prefer the opposite. If I have to make a mistake, it has to be an over pushing mistake. You know, on lap 1, I'm gonna send it. I'm gonna test the limit. I'm gonna test the grip of the track, because every session, guys, the limit is gonna change. You know, one session the limit is gonna be here. One session is gonna be there. One session you have to brake here. Session brake there. So what I wanna find down lap 1, almost even if I have to go in the grass, I'll be like, I'm just gonna brake so late that I will for sure miss the apex. But at least I will figure out for the next lap where the grip is. And I'm telling you, by doing so, by lap 2 or 3, I already found the limit, which is something that drivers take 15 laps in a session to take. I think that's one of my specialty, and I think drivers like Verstappen are even more specialized in that, because that's what you need. You know, you gotta find the limit right away. And if you take 10 laps to figure it out in quali in an F1, it's game over. You don't even have 10 laps in quali. And my bonus number 4, and that's why I use the blue the blue text, let me put it back, is related to the number 1, which is low grip. You should try ice-karting. Guys, ice-karting is amazing. I have done it a few times. It's just phenomenal. You know why? Because you are testing your car control skills, because basically you have to all the time drive in opposite steering lock. So if you have a right-hander, you gotta be like that. And that's how you gotta make the corner. You gotta make the corner by making the rear slide, and basically that's the only way to rotate, you know, because otherwise if you try to rotate with the steering and just braking, it's just not possible. Which goes to show you that in the wet, you gotta be having such a high rotation car. You don't wanna have gripper. You gotta have so much rotation from the car, and the driver needs to be adaptable and used to driving that high rotation, because at the end of the day, the longer you have to wait for the rotation, the more time you lose in the middle of the corners. And that's why in ice karting you got to drive all the time sideways, because if you actually try to wait for the rotation by braking straight and using the steering like, you know, gently, you will never rotate that car and you will just lose so much time. So if you have the chance and you go to the Dolomites or anywhere, like I wish I could go to Finland. I would love to do that. I have to convince my girlfriend to do that. Maybe this winter we'll do it. But that's, by the way, why so many Finnish drivers like Mika Häkkinen, Kimi Räikkönen, Valtteri Bottas are so good and like naturally quote unquote talents in just car control. And that's why they say, oh yeah, these Finnish drivers, I love car control. But the reality is that they're not born like that. They develop that because even when they go with a road car on, you know, to go to the grocery store, let's say, or to the gym, they're most of the times ice on the track, on the road actually. And so even if they're not doing ice karting, they have to still counter steer. And I would do that for sure. If I would be driving on a road which is icy, I would all the time put my car in opposite lock. Don't do this at home, but I mean, obviously if it's safe and there's no traffic and etc., you know. But that's how you develop the car control, and that's why these Finnish drivers are so good. And of course we have also a lot of drivers from the UK which are so good in these conditions. That's why there's a lot of F1 drivers from the UK, because they drive in the UK most of the time in the wet, and that's why, by the way, many drivers from Italy are going to train in the UK, because they know that if they go in the UK, you'll find rain almost like at least in the morning on a daily basis in like tracks like PFI. And it makes sense, to be honest. In Italy, you don't get you get a bit of water. Like today was like a massive storm, but it's not that often. Anyways, you should try ice karting, or you should move to Finland. No, just kidding. But honestly, if you get a chance to try ice karting, it's not something you can do every day, of course, but it's gonna teach you a lot about car control, and you're gonna love it. I mean, it's been such a fun experience. I did it with the kids at BabyRace. We did a winter camp last time we did it, and it was at Livigno. And yeah, we went there and we just kept driving for hours and hours and hours, and it was awesome. It was awesome experience, just like developing the skills. And yeah, but these are the 3+ bonus things I suggest you to yeah, work on in order to develop your car control. It's not something you are born with. Remember, you're not born with it. Like, you've watched the movie of Senna, probably, like the Netflix series. You know, it says himself that he wasn't born being good in the rain. In the rain, he was terrible at first, and I was terrible at first, and probably Max Verstappen was terrible at first at the beginning. But by just driving and driving and driving and getting used to in these low grip conditions, and you know, in this, and you keep pushing the limits, you keep testing, you make mistakes, you spin, and then you see that Ayrton Senna goes from being very bad in the wet to being a legend and probably the greatest of all time in the rain, winning crazy legendary races, you know, almost winning his first race when he was in Toleman, and he was almost about to win the race, and then they shut the race down in Monaco and to give the win to Prost, and all sort of. And then when he won the race and was in Portugal in pouring rain conditions, and it's just been phenomenal. And also all the greats, also like Michael Schumacher, almost about to lap everybody in Spa-Francorchamps. Was that 1998 when he crashed with Coulthard, and he was basically lapping him, and he was in P2. But anyways, you get my point. You should develop. You can develop car control in these three things, and I believe it's not only going to help you develop car control, but you're just gonna be way better driver than if you didn't do these things. But again, this is something you just do it naturally. I mean, I didn't think about, oh, I gotta develop a control. I was lucky that I had a mechanic which taught me these kind of things, and he just used common sense. He was like, okay, we need to teach him like that. And I was, yeah, Piero gave me such a great head start on everybody else, and I wish I can translate this to you, and hopefully you can apply this on track next time you go, and you can look for a holiday just related to ice karting for next winter. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure you check this other recommended video below, or watch the whole driving hacks playlist.